Wow, so I just finished watching House of the Dragon. I can definitely say that it's something that I have seen. Joking aside, I actually had a hard time piecing this script together because I was struggling to find something to say about this show besides meh. I mean, it feels like I just watched 8 hours of stuck-up politicians drinking wine and talking about armies marching without anything actually happening.
Boring!
Of course, things do happen in this show. However, they happen at such a slow speed that I felt like I was dragging myself to come watch every episode. The best way to describe this season is that it's like watching your favorite race car driver do another lap around the track, but it's all happening in slow motion, and then suddenly, before the end, you see the car pull off to the side and stop before the race is actually over. It's like toast without any butter. It's foreplay without the spanking. It's Canada without war crimes. It's just no fun. I mean, we all remember the trailer, right? It's all epic with war and sword fighting and dragons. Like, this was supposed to be it, right? Season 1's finale left us on a huge cliffhanger that made us feel prepared for war. Aemon had just killed Rhaenyra's son. Like, this is it. The final straw, right? I mean, the look on Rhaenyra's face just says,
art and peace and all that shit can wait. Now's the time for men to be men.
And narratively, that would make a lot of sense. Season 1 was all about the setup and how this family keeps falling deeper and deeper into mistrust and hatred. It was the setup for the foundation on which we would see the Civil War take place. Like, this was all supposed to be a lead up to a big war. No more negotiations and no more treaties.
No more games! War! Ah! The real thing! War! War! War!
Right?
You can prevent this, Alicent. Terrible war is looming. And even victory may be so bloody as to be counted a loss.
Oh. I guess not. Crippling indecision. So like I said, Season 1's finale was to set up a bigger story and a climactic fight in Season 2. Rhaenyra's lost her son Luke, so there's really no way for the character to reconcile with the Greens at this point. This is further supported in Season 2, Episode 1. Rhaenyra spends the whole episode mourning Luke, and when she finally returns to Dragonstone at the end of the episode, the only thing she says is,
I want Aemon Targaryen.
So you think after this scene there'd be some kind of strategy meeting with her council on how to kill Aemon. But no, she actually never brings it up again and takes no direct action against Aemon for the entire season. Rhaenyra instead does all she can do to prevent further war. She delays in military actions, she tries to offer peace to Alicent, and refuses to send her dragons to battle. She even gets these Targaryen bastards to become dragon riders for a deterrent. And it all feels weird. Like, the character is lost in this limbo of indecision and good intentions. What was the point of showing us these two identical scenes that directly tells the audience that Rhaenyra is going to war, if in the next episode she does a 180 to avoid conflict at all costs? There is no event or moment that brings this revelation either. It just happens. What is even her plan for peace at this point? You're going to forgive the guy who murdered your son in cold blood? Even if you could, I don't think a guy like Aemon is just going to give up his grip on power. And even if he wasn't a problem to begin with, you still got your arch nemesis Alicent and her weird demon children that hate you. You going to let them go too?
I must take Aegon's head. And I have to do it for all to see. You know this. However you may try to evade it, you know this.
Wait, so you knew that you had to kill Aegon to win the throne, but you said you wanted peace with Alicent like an episode ago. So which is it? You want peace or you want to kill all these people?
I went to King's Landing
To what possible end?
to meet Queen Alicent and sue for peace. I inherited 80 years of peace from my father. Before I was to end it, I needed to know that there was no other path.
A few moments later.
If I am to take the throne, I must put an end to the opposition. I must take Aegon's head. And I have to do it for all to see. You know this. However you may try to evade it, you know this.
See, the writers want to depict Rhaenyra as this morally righteous character that will only use war as a last resort to win her throne. However, this neither makes sense from a character viewpoint, nor does it work on any logical level either. There is no way for Rhaenyra to be queen without going to war. Her not understanding this makes her come off as kind of an idiot. What makes it worse is that her main idea to stop the war is to do nothing. I mean, I guess she goes to King's Landing to try to reason with Alicent. However, she never actually tries to offer any real terms of peace. She just says that they should stop fighting, and then Alicent walks away saying it's too late. You know, when you're trying to negotiate for the fate of your kingdom, it may be a good idea to lay out some terms. Maybe if Rhaenyra had actually come to Alicent with some kind of plan as to what this peace would look like, she may have been more open to talking about it. Like, what if Rhaenyra had offered some kind of marriage pact? It's not a great option, but it's something at least. But the reason Rhaenyra didn't offer anything is because there is nothing to offer.
But if you and I may come to terms...
There are no terms now.
The main problem is that Rhaenyra is acting against the grain of the story, as well as her own character. Also that the writers can delay and stall the plot for one more episode. And these delays can be felt through nearly every scene of the show. Rhaenyra's council is constantly hounding her to make some goddamn decisions, which she just ignores. I found this pretty irritating because the show paints her counselors simply as sexist assholes who want nothing but conflict. However, I found myself agreeing with them most of the time, because simply sitting on an island and complaining is fucking dumb.
You did not prepare me to fight. If I had been a son, a sword thrust into my hand the moment I could walk. Instead, I was given my father's cup, taught the name of every lord and castle between Storm's End and the Twins, but not the difference between hilt and foible.
Jesus Christ, is there nothing without this complaining?
The whole Battle of Rook's Rest is completely Rhaenyra's fault. Had she not allowed an enemy army to march on her allies and decided to send her dragons to war, then Rhaenys probably wouldn't have died, and Aemond would probably have been killed. But I guess sending one dragon and a close advisor into what is most certainly a trap is a better idea. No, don't bring all 4 dragons across this small bay to defeat a small army. It's too dangerous. I mean, Aemond probably would never have attacked if he saw 4 dragons all together. I know Vhagar is the biggest, baddest dragon around, but there's no way she could fight 4 dragons at once. She had a hard time with melees, after all. So Aemond would probably have not engaged at all and let the army die. And I know what you're going to say, but this is what happened in the books. Well, this isn't a book. It's a goddamn TV show, and the writers have shown that they're willing to make adjustments to George's writing if it serves their purpose. So making some changes to the story to make the characters more logical isn't asking for a lot. Even if they had just made Rhaenyra more decisive on who she would be sending to the battle, it would make her character way more interesting. Again, we see the same situation where the council's making suggestions to her, which she just says no to. And then Rhaenys is finally like, fuck it, I'll go, and takes away any agency from the queen who's supposed to be making these decisions instead of dragging her goddamn feet. House of the Dragon is a Hobbit sequel. So when Peter Jackson and the executives of Warner Brothers decided to dip back into Tolkien's honey jar, they took a look at The Hobbit, a book for children that was about as long as an aircraft safety card. And despite the short amount of text, the greedy bastards still wanted a movie trilogy. So they made 3 films that were boring, long, stupid, and oh yeah, boring. The main issue was that they had a limited amount of content that they could pull from to make their movies. So in order to fill the runtime, the writers had to come up with their own characters and scenes to shove into the plot. As it turns out, though, writing to fill a tightly written story isn't easy to do and often feels forced and unnecessary. Character storylines like the rivalry between Thorne and the White Orc, as well as the love story between Kate from Lost and the handsome little person, were overdone. It drew away from the main story, and it ended up straining the audience's attention, because all we wanted was to get back to the main plot with the fucking dragon. House of the Dragon, to be specific. Oh yeah, so let's get back to that. So both of these franchises have a lot in common. They are both prequels to famously successful fantasy series. Both are based on much smaller books when compared to their counterparts. And they are both steaming piles of bloated crap.
It's just the shit.
These are just shit.
Fire and Blood is not a stack of textbooks like The Song of Ice and Fire. The writers can't strip the book for scenes like they did back in Game of Thrones. So they have to fill in the blanks to a book that is often vague and based on interpretation. Did I also mention that it's not that long? If you look at the wiki page, every character's lore is like 4 paragraphs long.
So, whilst we're changing plot things, we're changing some events, we're changing characters, we're losing characters, while we're doing all the normal stuff that you have to do to adapt a book.
So when writers add content to fill the runtime for each episode, it's often needless scenes of petty drama that overall doesn't have a large impact on the narrative. The kiss between Mysaria and Rhaenyra is a good example of this, as it's not brought up again or discussed by either character. Or Alicent's time away from King's Landing in episode 7. Alicent is feeling lost after she's kicked out of the council by Aemond, so she has one of the Kingsguard knights escort her on a little camping trip in the woods. In the second scene, we see her riding around, and then this slow-ass interaction happens.
I will retire now, Sir Rickard.
When does your grace mean to return to the city?
I'm not yet certain I do. Good night.
And to finish this little arc in the third scene, we see Alicent go for a swim in the lake. Okay, so what did we learn from this woodland vacation sequence? So I guess Alicent seems to be enjoying the peace of the forest? Although she doesn't look very happy. She looks pretty sorrowful and drab. She even goes into her tent to sleep in broad daylight instead of chat with her one companion on this trip. I mean, look at this chick's face. I thought she was going to go drown herself in that lake. And you know what? That would be more interesting. I mean, they've used this imagery of Alicent drowning before. Maybe she could have tried to off herself because she was depressed. Then at the last moment, the Kingsguard Knight comes to save her, and then she could have this revelation about what she's got to do next. I mean, like, what is this arc supposed to be? Alicent wants to go live in the woods like a hermit and be forgotten? Like, holy shit, all of these scenes mean absolutely nothing to the plot. They are just an excuse to kill some time and save some money by having Alicent walk around in an area that's less tax-heavy than downtown Croatia. This is the last leg of the season and we're wasting time on something like this? We don't learn anything about the character, and no new information is provided. The whole time the audience is itching for the scene to switch back to the fucking dragon fight, or anything more interesting. If you cut out this whole sequence, it would not have changed the plot in the slightest. I mean, I would rather watch Season 4 of The Boys than watch this crap. Okay, sorry. No, I took that too far. That was mean. That should never be joked about. I'll try again. I'd rather go on a date with Jeffrey Dahmer than watch this shit. Oh, wait. No, what are you doing?
Told you. We're gonna hang out.
God, no, please. Anything but this. Don't do this to me.
Pictures.
No! Daemon Targaryen, the retarded prince. You know, before my father tragically jumped to his death from the second tower during 9/11, he called me and made me vow to never waste the little time I had in my life, and to always make the most of it. Regretfully, I have let him down, because I ended up wasting what feels like an eternity watching this show. Probably the most disappointing thing about House of the Dragon is the star of the show, Daemon Targaryen. And yes, it is Daemon. No matter what the advertising says, or how the story presents itself, the real draw to the show is Matt Smith, not Emma Darcy and her David Bowie haircut.
Oh man. Oh God. Oh man. Oh God. Oh man. Oh God. Oh man. Oh God. Oh man.
Daemon is by far the most complex and compelling characters in the show. He's charismatic, morally ambiguous, he's got sick armor, an awesome dragon, a funny voice,
I can renounce the false King Aegon as a usurper,
and a cool sword that he kills people with, and I like that. So when you lock this character away in a haunted house for a whole season, it's going to make people annoyed because it's essentially sidelining your best player on your team, both metaphorically and literally. Like, what the fuck is Daemon doing in Harrenhal all season? He's supposed to be gathering an army, I guess, but he doesn't really act like he is. All Daemon does is demand that the Riverlords come pay tribute to him in this decrepit castle, but then he scolds them when they actually show up.
Is there some reason you feel free to wake a king in his bed? Or shall I now begin your education?
Why would Daemon not be flying around from castle to castle gathering an army if that was his real mission? He has a dragon. He could have rallied an army in a week if he wanted to. What is the purpose of staying in Harrenhal and making all these lords come to him when it takes them days or weeks for them to get there? And it's not like Daemon likes Harrenhal. It's a haunted castle that he seems to dread. His room is uncomfortable. He doesn't trust his host, Simon Strong. He has no men, money, or supplies. He's constantly having weird nightmares and hallucinations. And his only friend is a witch that is drugging him with blood magic. So why wouldn't he leave and go anywhere else in the region? I mean, they say that Harrenhal is the key to the Riverlands, but it's not like Daemon has to be there the whole time. He'd be informed if Criston began moving his forces towards the castle, so all he would have to do is fly to Harrenhal before the enemy got there.
Wow.
So ironically, when Daemon finally catches on to all this weird shit, he does the logical thing and tries to leave, only to be guilt-tripped into staying by Alice Rivers, the witch who has been fucking with his head the whole season.
The ghost of Harren the Black moaning his curses from Kingspire Tower?
Drivel! All of it! The ghost, the curses, the blasted weirwood bed, I'm done with it!
Ah, yes, it is your way, is it not? When something does not please you, you run.
So wait, Daemon is in a paranoid state and seems to be on the verge of a mental breakdown, but he doesn't suspect the weird ghost chick that speaks in riddles and roofies him? Daemon refuses the food Simon Strong provides for him because he's afraid of being poisoned, yet he'll drink a weird blood potion because a creepy albino chick made it for him? There is a clear cause to Daemon's problems here, so why can't he see it? It's like he's been dropped on his head or something, or maybe he's just pussy whipped by Alice. But either way, this makes Daemon look like an idiot. She says stuff like,
ah, yes, it is your way, is it not? When something does not please you, you run. Dragonstone, Stepstones, Pentos, Harrenhal.
I wake and I do not know where I've been.
You will die in this place.
It's a pity, don't you think, that you never knew your mother?
So why doesn't Daemon ever ask her how she knows all this information about him specifically? How does she know why he left Pentos, or Dragonstone, or how he didn't know his mother? It's a weird thing to say to a complete stranger, yet Daemon never catches on to this weird, creepy dialogue.
Question after question. Makes for very poor conversation.
So when Daemon isn't easily being manipulated by an evil witch, he's being outsmarted by a child. To summarize the whole Riverlands conflict, Daemon takes Harrenhal and plans to create an army there. He meets with the young Oscar Tully, but because he is a child, Daemon disrespects him and pretty much tells him to get lost. The Blackwoods are the first to offer to join Daemon in his conquest if he helps them fight their ancient rivals, the Brackens. Daemon then tries to force the Brackens to join him, even though he's promised to fight them. But they refuse. In turn, Daemon orders the Blackwoods to raid the Brackens. The Riverlords then blame Daemon for the atrocities committed by the Blackwoods and refuse to follow him. Afterwards, Oscar Tully offers to join Daemon and mend the rift between him and the Riverlords, if in return Daemon kills Willem Blackwood for his crimes against the Brackens. Daemon complies and kills Willem, finally achieving his goal and getting the army.
Right.
Okay, so this is all pretty stupid and pointless. And it all ends up making Daemon look like a total fool. Firstly, the biggest issue with this plotline is how bad Daemon is at diplomacy. He does a terrible job at uniting the Riverlords to his cause, and only gets the job done because a child allows him to do so. The fact that Oscar Tully joins Daemon at all is baffling. Since he is a new lord and out to prove himself to the other ruling families, you'd think that the smartest plan would be to fight Daemon since all the other lords hate him. It's weird that the Riverlords are in any way convinced by this little speech. An episode ago, they called Daemon a tyrant, and they said they'd never follow him.
Dragon or no, we shall not raise our banners for a tyrant.
Also, having Daemon kill Willem Blackwood doesn't make any sense if the Riverlands are going to side with Rhaenyra. After all, the Blackwoods have a powerful army that probably won't fight alongside the Tullys once they find out that their liege lord has been killed. After all, Willem was just doing what the prince, and by extension the queen, wanted. This was also after the Brackens had killed the former Blackwood lord. So they are completely justified in their struggle against the Brackens, and antagonizing them would only cause further conflict within the Riverlands. Probably not something a new lord would want to rule over. What is even more baffling is that anyone actually gives a shit that the Blackwoods are raiding the Brackens at all. So what if the Blackwoods committed atrocities? This is fucking Game of Thrones. These people do this shit to each other all the time.
Sir Gregor will head out with 500 riders and set a riverland on fire from God's Eye to the Red Fork.
Raiding and pillaging is par for the course for these motherfuckers. All of a sudden, these people have 21st century morality? This whole debacle with the Blackwoods and Brackens all happened so this fucking kid can put Daemon in his place?
What the fuck is this world? What have they done to us? What did they do to us?
The show acts like this is a huge moment for Daemon. Like he's finally being humbled. He's fucked up and now he's got to pay the price. Like he's finally learning a lesson by killing this Willem Blackwood guy. But from a character perspective, this is a pretty good deal for Daemon. Kill this one guy he barely knows and he gets a whole kingdom of support? It's not like Daemon hasn't done evil shit before to get what he wants. He's killed his own fucking wife just so he could go bang his niece. You're telling me it's a big deal to him to kill Willem?
I'm not worried about it. I know I used to be a piece of shit. I don't give a rat's ass.
If the writers wanted to show a more mature side to Daemon's character, they should have done the opposite of this. Sparing Willem and choosing not to kill a man loyal to Daemon would have shown a real step towards becoming a more honorable man. It would have been a more compelling decision if Daemon had refused the easy path to getting an army and decided to uphold his word to the Blackwoods instead. Or maybe if the writers had actually decided to build more of a relationship between these two men, it would have felt more impactful. Instead, we get 2 scenes with these characters together before Daemon kills them. All this reveals to us is that Daemon is still a selfish asshole who is totally willing to kill anyone to get what he wants. This is only made worse by the fact that he's tricked into making this choice. Daemon is a royal prince and a battle-tested warrior. The fact that he's deaf to diplomacy is maddening. It seems that the character does everything he can to piss people off. He's constantly rude to people that he's trying to win over and has ridiculous expectations. It's one thing to show Daemon as callous and reckless, but to have him be borderline retarded is another.
Well, my time is short and I have need of an army. Perhaps you might place a feather pillow over his head and speed along your inheritance.
Would a character like Daemon be so crude to people that he's trying to win the favor of? This guy grew up in a royal court. He was on the small council. Yeah, he's a dick to his enemies, but he is shown to have some skill at winning allies. He's teamed up with Corlys before and was hosted by the rulers of Pentos for years. Did he get these things from being a complete ass to everyone? Daemon is the blood of the dragon, the rogue prince. This is not who he is. Daemon is not someone to be sidelined and manipulated for a whole season. He's a badass, and that should not be changed. And to make it clear, I'm not saying that Daemon cannot grow as a whole. But there are certain character elements that need to stay the same. Jaime Lannister didn't become some pussy after he lost his hand. He maintained his dignity while growing into a more humble and wise man. The only way the writers seem to know how to humble Daemon is to cut his balls off and turn him into a simp. And somehow I doubt this is what the writers were going for. I think they wanted to show us Daemon's growth by constantly showing us his tortured soul through some weird dream sequences. Fucking hell, I'm not actually going to have to talk about these, am I? The Dance of the Boring Dreams. So when Daemon isn't being emasculated by lesser characters, he's stuck in a constant cycle of pointless dreams that have almost nothing to do with the main plot or his own character development. Let's take a look at some of these deep and interesting dreams, shall we?
Anyway, $4 a pound.
Okay, so Daemon approaches the Iron Throne only to be confronted by a young Rhaenyra. He tells him that he created her and that Viserys loved her more than him. Daemon gets upset by this, spawns the sword, and cuts her head off. And that's it. That's the scene. And yet somehow this interaction is almost 2 minutes long. Half of the scene is Daemon just slowly approaching the throne, while muffled Rhaenyra says something that neither he or the audience can hear. When we finally do hear Rhaenyra speak, all she does is communicate information that the audience already knows. We know that it's Daemon's fault that Rhaenyra became the heir to the throne. Showing us that Daemon resents this fact is not news to us. There's a whole season of the show that's already told this story. Not only that, but Daemon and Rhaenyra have also just had an argument about this very same topic an episode prior.
Folly!
Not before us.
To give up my brother's throne to the traitorous lies of Otto
My
Hightower.
throne! Daemon! Mine!
Okay, so what was this for? Why did the writers do this? Well, trippy dream sequences are fun, and it will, oh yeah, kill some time. You can just tell from every one of these dreams that they were tailor-made to waste the audience's time without us noticing it. They either repeat information or give us shallow revelations for the character that mean almost nothing. Oh look, it's Daemon with an eye patch. Can't you see that he and Aemond are just alike? Or the writers will straight up repeat scenes, except make them far less compelling. Just listen to the difference between Viserys' speech in Season 1 versus Season 2.
But instead of being by my side or Rhaenyra's, you chose to celebrate your own rise! Laughing with your whores and your leg spittles!
But instead, you chose to celebrate your own rise, laughing at me.
Laughing with the whores and lick spittles.
Why is this the take that they went with? I guess they were trying to go for a more somber vibe. However, it just ends up being less interesting. And again, what is the purpose of replaying this scene if they weren't going to add anything new to it? Another huge problem with all these dream sequences is that Daemon hardly interacts with them. He has nothing to say to the ghosts of his past? Really? He has nothing to get off his chest? Nothing to repent for? So again, like everything else in this crappy show, it all ends up being dull. It would have been far more interesting if they had done the heir for a day speech again, but have Daemon actually ask for Viserys' forgiveness instead of argue with him. It'd been way cooler if they had given us a new perspective on this scene instead of just wasting our time. If the goal of these dreams was to show Daemon having some regret for being a piece of shit for his entire life, while also confronting the fact that he has played a major part in the events leading up to this conflict, then maybe have him fucking say something. God, he just stands there with his mouth agape like an idiot. And for the record, I actually like the idea of Harrenhal being haunted. I think on paper it's interesting to think of a character like Daemon being tormented by weird dreams. However, the idea of something is very different from its execution. And House of the Dragon's execution is like watching someone get decapitated by a butter knife. Now there are shows, better shows mind you, that have played around with long dream sequences before to great effect. If done correctly, it can be a cool way to tell a story and reveal intimate details about a character. What they think, what they fear, and what they want. The Sopranos was famous for this kind of storytelling. Some of Tony's biggest revelations in the show come from his dreams. And whether you like them or not, they always said a lot about his character. But House of the Dragon clearly saw this as an opportunity to extend the plot and distract their best character from interacting with the main story. All of this even becomes more evident by the end when Daemon has his final vision of the Long Night and the coming threat of the White Walkers. Something that was not foreshadowed at all by his previous visions and is only dropped on us at the last moment. How does this make any sense within the context of Daemon's previous dreams? There has been no reference to the future of the ultimate destiny of Westeros until this final vision. Therefore, all of the previous visions have had no real purpose as Daemon did not need them in order to understand the threat of the Long Night. I mean, this revelation seems to have a dramatic impact on Daemon's character, making him give up on his personal ambitions of being a king. So why have all these other visions if he only needed the one? It all feels sudden and unearned. And of course, there's an easy way to fix these issues, and it was right under the writers' noses. Had they just written a scene where Viserys and Daemon settled their old beef, if Viserys had finally given Daemon the recognition he had wanted so badly, it would have been far more satisfying to watch. They could have had a very similar scene to where Viserys told Rhaenyra about the prince that was promised, but instead have him tell Daemon. Then Viserys could have explained that though he loved Daemon, Rhaenyra is the one that needs to lead the realm, and it's Daemon's job to help her. Having this revelation given more directly and by a character that Daemon has wanted approval from the entire show would have been far more fulfilling to both the character and the audience. But now I guess we have to settle for some weird mommy dream sex and a crying scene with Viserys. God, what a wasted comeback for Paddy Constantine. So this is what we're left with. An awful character assassination that made me want to fall asleep instead of feel any real emotion. And you know what? I think I'm going to go take that nap. Because I'm pretty sure I put in more effort ripping this show apart than the creators did actually writing it. Can Hot D be unburdened by what has been? So when House of the Dragon first came out, I think a lot of people saw it as a second chance for the franchise. By creating a new story in Westeros while also washing out the horrible taste left over from the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. It was something that the fan base needed, and it felt sincere. Like the showrunners knew that they had to walk themselves back from their predecessor. It had all the political intrigue, incest, dragons, sword fighting, weird sex, and more incest. All the things that made the franchise so popular to begin with. However, as much as they tried, I could never shake the feeling of that big skeleton in the closet. It felt hard not to peer over the shoulder of this show and see what it was all leading to. The writers were smart enough to avoid too much discussion of things like the White Walkers in Season 1. However, Season 2 it seems like they've tried to lean more into it. Prophetic dreams of the Long Night, as well as references to Daenerys, have become more of an overarching piece of the narrative. Characters' motivations like Daemon and Rhaenyra have been guided by coming events. But all this does is bring the audience's attention back to that horrible memory. And while some may be able to look past this problem, I can't help but feel like there's a subconscious scar on the franchise. That no matter what they do, no matter how good the show gets, that it would never be able to heal this wound. And I mean, how could they? If all of the events of the show ultimately lead to the story of Game of Thrones, then their actions feel empty and their motivations are made pointless because we all know how this is going to go. We know that the Long Night is literally 1 night long, and that the White Walkers are nothing more than a mild inconvenience. So having all of this menacing foreshadowing in House of the Dragon feels empty. It's kind of like watching the original trilogy of Star Wars and hearing Obi-Wan talk about the Clone Wars and Anakin. But now, all you can think of is...
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too.
Now, apparently George R.R. Martin has claimed that House of the Dragon is supposed to be more of a prequel to the books than it is to Game of Thrones. However, if you use the same sets and locations as the TV show, it doesn't really matter what you say because the scenery resonates with the Game of Thrones audience. Nobody is watching this and thinking that it's a prequel to the books. And now it seems that George himself may be regretting making that claim, as he's been crying all over Twitter on how the show is ruining his lore. And you know, George is the one I blame for this colossal disaster of an IP. If Martin had spent more time finishing his legacy instead of wasting his time on shitty TV shows, then maybe all of these issues could have been averted. It's been 13 years since A Dance of Dragons came out. Martin is 75 years old, and he's not getting any younger. So if House of the Dragon is tied to A Song of Ice and Fire, then all of this foreshadowing is going to lead to jack shit, because I don't think Martin's ever going to finish the series. He's got a handful of TV shows that he's personally involved in, and now he's helping with games like Elden Ring. But what's sad is that this is not what he'll be remembered for. A Song of Ice and Fire is his legacy. An incomplete one.
You know, it's the same update I've been giving for a long time. I continue to work on it. It continues to get longer and longer.
Bullshit!
Other shit that made me roll my eyes. So here's a quick list of little things that bothered me. Number 1, why does Alice say this?
It's perhaps why your brother gave the crown to her. Perhaps those who strive for it are the least suited to wear it.
The writers were trying to make her sound wise by playing on the reluctant hero trope, but it's pretty retarded when you think about it. Aegon didn't want the throne, and he's an awful leader. Actually, not wanting the responsibility is probably, if anything, a sign of a bad leader, since someone who doesn't want this responsibility won't be ready to make major decisions. Number 2. How was it this easy for Rhaena to run off into the wilderness? So after she leaves the Bloody Gate, she waits for like 3 seconds. Nobody notices that she's lagging behind, and then she bolts off into the field. These 2 guys ahead of her aren't even alerted. How the fuck can a whole royal escort not have their eyes on one of the 3 children they're supposed to protect?
I'll send 6 good men to protect you on the crossing.
Were there no guards on the wall manning the gate watching the escort leave? Nobody looking down on the only fucking road they're supposed to be watching? Not one guy was like, hey, the fucking girl you're supposed to be protecting is running away. I mean, like, how long did it take for these guys to notice that she was gone? Rhaenyra's in a field, all they had to do was look in her direction.
Are we blind? Deploy the garrison! Move!
I mean, even if you forgive all that, then what did the escort do when they realized that Rhaenyra was gone? Did they just say, fuck it, let's keep going? Or did they turn back to the bloody gate and tell the retarded guards what happened? I mean, the Vale would have some kind of hunters or trackers, right? Some horses? They could head out and find her pretty quickly. Yet the show gives us no indication that anyone knew that Rhaenyra was gone, let alone thought to send anyone to find her.
You had one job. Just the one.
Number 3. Why the fuck did Rhaenys fly back to fight Aemond after she defeated Aegon? I mean, from her perspective, she's killed one of the few dragons the Greens have, and the king is likely dead as well. If she had just flown back to Dragonstone, it would have been a major victory for the Blacks. However, for no fucking reason at all, Rhaenys decides to fly back and take on the biggest dragon in the world and gets killed. The chances of her winning were slim to begin with, and her dying deprives Rhaenyra of a valuable dragon as well as a good counselor. I have a suspicion that the real reason that the creators decided to write it this way was because they still needed Rhaenys to die like she does in the books, but they didn't want a strong female warrior to be bested or outsmarted by an evil man. So they had her ride into glory one last time, going out on her own terms. They even make it so the only way Aemond actually wins is by being a sneaky little bitch and having him snag her out of nowhere. In any case, Rhaenys is pretty stupid for this decision, and it overall lessened her character because of it. Number 4. The time and distance jumping is still an issue for this show. Kristen Cole was moving all around from place to place this season, while it took other characters ages to get anywhere. How long has that Lannister army been marching again?
So
You with me?
I was, yeah. We were at.
You actively napping?
I drifted.
Number 5. Why did Rhaenyra introduce all of the bastards to the dragon all at once? She didn't think to do it one at a time just in case this happened? It's only by pure luck that anyone survived, let alone getting 2 dragon riders out of the situation. It would have been easy to bring everyone in one by one over the course of a couple days. This all could have easily blown up in her face, and it's fucking retarded that she got anything out of the situation. Number 6. On the note of the dragon riders, why the hell did Rhaenyra try to let the Lord Commander of her Queensguard try to ride Seasmoke, an already claimed dragon? Rhaenyra is the only one who knows that her ex-husband is still alive, so why the hell did she not offer him a different dragon? I mean, it probably wouldn't have worked out anyway, but it would have been a lot smarter trying to pair this guy with a dragon you know doesn't have a rider. Attractive English women. You know, out of all the fantasy elements in this show, from the dragons to the locations, the magic and so on, the most unrealistic thing about this whole show is the attractive British women. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the UK, and never have I seen pretty women.
With Faith and ask her about what her beliefs are, because maybe I'm believing. Well, maybe you are.
Anyway, so I guess I was feeling a little misled. Like, where are you hiding them, England? The Hollywood shills are making pretty British women out of CGI. Where did they all go? It's a lie! It's a big scam! It's a big scam! One last slap in the face. Alright, let's get this over with. This is by far the most insulting piece of writing that has been shot out onto the screen by this series since the ending of Game of Thrones.
You are my queen. Now. And always.
A little mad because I don't understand it. And I get a little irritated because I don't know what you're talking about.
It fails on any logical level, as well as completely fucking any character development by Alicent or Rhaenyra. Alicent secretly comes to meet Rhaenyra on Dragonstone to offer her a quick and easy way to take King's Landing. Alicent claims that Aemond is heading off to war, and so the city will be defenseless. Alicent will then order the city to surrender to Rhaenyra, and she can take the throne without any unnecessary bloodshed. Rhaenyra, however, demands that Alicent also has to give over Aegon to be executed, so that there will be no competition to her throne, to which Alicent agrees.
What? What's that? Say that again? What? What the hell are you talking about? What?
Okay, so what the fuck is this? Both Rhaenyra and Alicent act way out of character in this scene, and pretty much shit all over their motivations this season. Alicent offering to surrender King's Landing to Rhaenyra so she can escape Westeros with her daughter makes no fucking sense. If all Alicent wants to do is flee, then she could have done that without meeting with Rhaenyra at all. She could have just grabbed whatever she wanted and left the country without anyone knowing. I mean, Alicent left King's Landing for a whole episode to go on a camping trip. She could have easily slipped away unnoticed. It's not like anyone seems to give a shit about her anyway.
And its arrogance, neither of which is to be desired
I
in a
release
king.
you of your seat, such as it was. Sure you'll be much pleased to return to more domestic pursuits.
The security around King's Landing seems to be fucking horrible as well. Characters sneak in and out of the city all season. So it's not hard to believe that she could take her daughter with her as well. Alicent herself has just gotten past a fucking blockade to come meet Rhaenyra. She could have just sailed past Dragonstone and kept going. Why did she make this super risky move of going to visit the home of her sworn enemy?
What? What are you talking about? What? What?
Oh my god, your daughter has a fucking dragon, just fly away on that, you moron. First of all, this deal is completely meaningless to the audience, since at this point we pretty much know that Aegon is leaving King's Landing with the crippled guy. The weight of this scene is lessened by this knowledge, and it only serves to completely ruin Alicent's character. It doesn't take much to point out that even though Alicent wasn't the perfect mother to her children, she doesn't want them to fucking die. She jumped in front of a dragon to protect her son only a season prior. You're telling me that she would be willing to put his head on a chopping block just so she could get a little bit more vacation time? As well, why does Rhaenyra only want Aegon to be killed? It's not like Aemond is going to be giving up after Aegon dies. Then there's the rest of Alicent's children who also pose a threat to Rhaenyra's claim on the throne. Rhaenyra realistically would have to kill all of Alicent's children so that there would be no competition for her successors. All of the Blackfyre rebellions were based around this problem, and those conflicts lasted generations. So only killing Aegon would not be enough, and the fact that neither character understands this is dumb. Well, that's about it. I think I covered all my bases with this show. I don't have much else to complain about. I guess to be fair, I should talk about the things I actually liked about this season, but don't worry, this will be a short list. I liked this scene with Daemon after he tried to deal with the Brackens.
I did not think they would be so eager to die.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I think Aegon's character was well written. He was funny, sympathetic, villainous, and stupid all at the same time. They did a good job making him feel like a real and layered person. He might have been the only character that left this season totally unscathed. The dragon fight was well shot. I like the camera angles, like how we see Rhaenys do this flip move. While being cool, it's also showing us how she is a more experienced rider. Even though the setup was stupid, I thought the dragon pit scene was well done. The tracking shot made it intense, and they did a good job showing the audience the destructive nature of the dragons. Simon Strong was an enjoyable character to watch. I like how he's just more or less a normal guy who just wants to chill out and eat some good food. It's rare to find a character in the series who's actually not politically motivated. So yeah, that's what I liked. But overall, this season has just felt dull. It really felt like they were just stringing the audience along until the next season. Now I guess there has been some budget cuts at HBO, and the season was supposed to be 10 episodes but got cut down to 8. So this is an excuse I've heard a lot by people who defend the House of the Dragon. However, I felt like from the start that this was too many seasons for a story that isn't that long. The fact that they're cutting some of the characters out of the story while still making it 4 seasons long is weird to me. It all smells of corporate greed, an intention to drag along the fan base and squeeze every dime they can out of them. And you know, I'm getting the feeling that this has become some kind of abusive relationship. Like, I get tempted into the sexy dialogue and the good looks, but when I get comfortable and we finally move in together, the series starts punching me in the face for burning the casserole. But maybe we should learn a lesson this time. Maybe if we just stop paying attention to it, then George will get the message and stop wasting his time on all of these side projects and finish the damn book series. But that's not going to happen, is it? George is going to die, and all we'll be left with is shallow and empty cash grab TV shows that will disgrace the very name of A Song of Ice and Fire. And each and every episode of every installment will slowly drag itself closer and closer into obscurity, leaving the fanbase in this limbo state to wonder what could have been. That's your legacy, George. You don't need to wonder about it anymore. You'll be the author who never was.